Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. Okay, this is my third time trying to start this damn show. I keep cracking myself up because of my sweatshirt. Oh my God. I'm wearing, my sweetie got me another Batsy head. Batsy Head's one of my favorite artists, and he got me another Batsy Head sweatshirt for my birthday. And this one just has one of his little characters, like a little cat with like bugged out eyes, and his arms and his legs just sticking straight out. And he's just sitting there, and it says, heck, like heck. And that's how I feel a lot of the times. Oh my God. Okay, let's dive right into this show. Now, before I start talking, let me just tell you that I've been wanting to talk about this with you guys for a little bit because I realize that although I have talked about this with other people, I have not shared it here on the podcast. And I didn't want to leave you guys out. I wanted to share it with you all. So most recently, I have a friend, Brad Jensen, who is known as the Soba Bodybuilder. Some of you might know him from Instagram and online. He has a really big following, whatever. But you might also know him from my podcast. He's been on my podcast, and I've been on his podcast. So maybe that's where you recognize his name as well. And he has a program that he runs, and he often has me come in. I go in as a guest teacher when they get to the spirituality part. So he has me come in and talk to his people about that. And most recently, like a month or so ago, I was talking to his people about this idea of like spirituality and religion and like what was the difference between that. And one of the points that I made is that we are all spiritual beings, which means it is inherent in us. It's who we are. It's a part of who we are. And I'm going to dive into these definitions more in a minute, but I just want to kind of set the stage. Versus religion, which we often inherit, right, from the people that came before us, versus something that is inherent. Okay, so that's kind of where the inspiration for this came from. I was talking to his people, and I think just in general, what so many of us do is we confuse what has been inherited for who we really are. And I propose that they are not the same thing and that we should question these things. So first, let's break down what these words mean, okay? And this isn't a grammar lesson like to be fancy. It's just so there's a deeper understanding of how I'm applying this. So inherent, what that means is that it is an essential or a basic part of something. It is a permanent part of something. It's a quality of you that cannot be separated from the thing itself. So another way of saying it, it's intrinsic. It's an essential characteristic or a part of something that is inseparable from that thing. Okay. Then we have inherit. And now inherent is often interpreted as to receive something from somebody has died, from someone who's died, or also to receive something from a previous owner, or even from a generation. Because we can inherit money, we can inherit property, but we can also inherit things like physical traits. We can also inherit things, and this is the whole point of this little episode, is that we can all, besides inheriting money, land, property, whatever, we also can inherit physical characteristics, DNA, etc., from our parents. We can also inherit problems and circumstances. Like a lot of times when a new CEO takes over a company or a position, or a political figure takes over a seat, whether it's in Congress, House, President, whatever. A lot of times they'll say, oh, he inherited all of these problems, right? Because like shit rolls downhill, right? Okay. So inherent is like it's built in. It's a basic part of. And when I talk to, whether it's my yoga students or my one-to-one clients or people in the nest, the nesties, one of the things I try to remind them of, and it's not something that I think we don't get told this enough, is that inherent in us, like literally, I always say the way you came down the chute, the way that you came off the assembly line, right? Like when you were created and you were made, you came through with these inherent qualities, what I would call inherent truths. Number one being is that although you are a body, right? We feel like we have a body. We're living here in this realm, in this world, on earth, doing the human thing, right? Yes, and we are also inherently spiritual beings. We have spirit, we are a spirit, we have a soul, we are a soul, right? And yes, we have a body. But if we over identify with the physical body and the things in the physical realm, and we forget about the inherent truths about us, then this is where suffering and problems start to occur and happen. So, some of the things that I believe each one of you, whoever can hear my voice right now, I believe, and you don't have to believe me, but I believe inherently, here are some things about you. Number one, that you're one of God's kids, that you are a part, you are a beautiful and unique part of the greater whole and holiness. You are a part, an important part, right? An individual part of the greater universe. Number one, you are part of the source, which to me is love, right? Call it God, call it love, call it the divine, call it the universe, call it whatever you want to call it, right? Divine intelligence, source, I don't get hung up on the name. You are connected to that source and you can never be disconnected from that source. Whether you're born, you're alive, or you're dead, you are always connected, a part of that greater source. Know what else I believe? I believe that you are inherently good. I believe that you are inherently beautiful, that you are enough, and that you are worthy, and that you belong, and that all these things are true about you. I think you came through with these things being true. They are inherent. And then this is when the shit stirring starts, is that you're born into a family. And when you are let me give you an example. People will often say to me, well, I'm Catholic, or I'm Christian, or I'm this, or I'm that. And I'll say, well, you weren't born that thing. You were born as just like a little bouncing baby. Like you were just born as a clean slate. But what you inherited were the preferences of your parents, the choices a lot of times of your parents. You received their beliefs a lot of times. You got told things about yourself. And I often talk about this. Little kids, if you're ever around babies, just like babies and dogs, I always say this, like babies and animals, my cat is not laying around going like, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Am I worthy of this meal? Like, am I lovable? Right? Do I belong? Like, they're not having these existential crises, and neither are babies because they don't have language yet. They can't ideate. They can't come up with meanings and stories and narratives about them. But you know who can start to tell them shit about themselves, which is really just more a reflection of the adult and the people running the show than it is about that child and that baby? We inherit shit from them. We inherit their preferences. We inherit their own, a lot of times, their own self-hatred, their own lack of self-worth, their own lack of emotional intelligence. The stuff that gets passed down, and it's not all bad, right? Sometimes you inherit great wealth. Sometimes you inherit great wisdom. Sometimes you inherit through watching and bearing witness to people in your life, whether it's your parents, your grandparents, a sibling, whoever, a teacher, a coach, whatever, who is incredibly compassionate and kind. I would say those of us who grew up watching Mr. Rogers, we inherited the invitation and the modeling of how to do compassion and kindness and patience and take our time, right? There's so much that we can inherit, but a lot of what we inherit, right? Things that we start to believe are inherent, but they're not. When we start to have thoughts like, I'm stupid, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't belong. These are things that we start to make true as if they've always been true, as if we came through not being good enough, not being worthy. But that's a lie. And we're deeply, deeply impressionable as children, as little beings. And if we don't pause at some point, this is part of like spiritual awareness. This is part of spiritual growth. This is part of personal development. Is that at some point we stop kind of like number one, blaming on everything, blaming everybody and everything that's wrong within us on people outside of us, right? We stop looking out there for saying like, oh, it's your fault that I feel this way. It's your fault that I'm doing this. It's your fault. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't systems in place, that there aren't institutions in place that carry on, right? Systems and decades and whatever, long, like longer than decades long, centuries old of racism and misogyny and sexism and all these and nepotism there are things that go on that have been that way for a long time, and I'm not saying that those things don't affect us. However, I believe there's a lot of those things on certain levels that we can't when we're children, let me put it this way, when we're children, we can't do anything about. We are at the mercy of the power structures and the powerful people. And sometimes that's just your parents, where we are influenced. We're influenced by their own thoughts, their own beliefs, their own stories and narratives, their own behaviors and their choices. So if your parents, right? Let's say your parents were like Scientologists or whatever, and then you're born into this family of Scientologists. Well, a lot of that rhetoric, a lot of those beliefs, a lot of those customs, traditions, habits, ways of being, worshiping, all that shit. A lot of kids, right? It's not until they're older when they can start to have their own kind of critical thinking and maybe they decide this isn't for them. And we can apply this to whatever religion or whatever. But a lot of times religions are inherited. A lot of times poverty is inherited. A lot of times racist point of views are just, they continue to just be passed down until a person is aware enough, awake enough, able enough, willing enough to get uncomfortable and to start to question these things that at one point, like when you think about like Romeo and Juliet, and you're like, oh, these families have always been at war. These families have always been against each other. And there's a reason why in A Course in Miracles, it says one of the holiest places on earth is where an ancient hatred turns into a present day love. I think this could apply to where the United States is at right now, too, in a lot of ways. Never mind other countries, right? If we just keep our eyes on our own paper as a country, and then if we can go even more micro and keep an eye on ourselves and our own thinking and stuff, we'll start to realize we've inherited some beliefs and some stories and some thoughts, some circumstances that we have to start questioning because it's not inherently who we are. We are not inherently, when we're little kids, racist. I'm not saying we're not born into racist systems, but little kids are not outwardly hateful towards other people who have different skin tones in them. We're taught to be little shits sometimes. We're taught to be unkind. We're taught to be hateful. We're taught to be prejudiced. Like our parents' prejudices can roll downhill unless you go, hey, that's uncool. What's that about? Until you start to question it. But most importantly, if we don't, how do I say this? I feel like we end up where we are in the world today because not enough people are questioning the inherent truths that like all men, people are created equal, that we should all have the right to pursue our own happiness, that we all are like one, the same under quote unquote God, right? These inalienable rights, because that's also what the term inherent describes, something that is an inalienable right or privilege. And I think we all should have the inalienable right to happiness, right? And to non-suffering, freedom from suffering, and not being persecuted. Do you know what I'm saying? But a lot of times we end up persecuting ourselves because we take these inherited things and we start to confuse them for what is inherent about us. So I'm going to say it as many times as I need to say it on this show. I'm going to keep reminding people, like one of my things is not only, right, an intention to spread more love, but to spread more kindness and compassion and to help people to remember who they truly are. And it is not your circumstances. It is not all these other things that we get, passed down to us. And what I was trying to say earlier is, it's all coming back to me. When we're little kids, we don't know that there's anything wrong, quote unquote, wrong with us until somebody outside of us, somebody external, starts to say things to us. And a lot of times they're unkind things because that person has a dysregulated nervous system. They have no emotional intelligence. They don't have any, they haven't read enough books. They don't understand the impact that they're having on their children or the people the beings that they're in charge of caretaking. And so they'll say things like, you're weird, you're fat, you're stupid, you're lazy, you'll never amount to much, I never should have had you, you were a mistake, blah, blah, blah. And then all these things are said to these little beings who basically have a brain that's still developing, has a personality that's still developing, has an ego that's still developing, and there's like a little record button that's been pressed inside, and they're just documenting all the things that are said to them. And up to a certain age, they don't have the capacity to question that maybe what their parent or guardian or caretaker or sibling or whoever, teacher, priest, whatever, is saying to them might not be true. We start to take these things that other people tell us about ourselves, right, as gospel truth, and we don't question them. And if we don't start to question some shit as adults, this is why things don't change. This is why a lot of times we don't change. So if we can start to stand in what's inherent in us, that we are spiritual beings, that we are part of the divine, that there is nothing in that you are perfect and beautiful and lovable and capable of loving, that you are happy, healthy, healed, whole, holy, right? Like that you have within you this source of love, that's what you really are. We forget sometimes, and we over-identify with the body. We over-identify with our bank account. We over-identify with having a sweetie or not having a sweetie. We over-identify like with the things that the internet tells us that success, quote, I'm doing air quotes, success looks like. And these beliefs and these structures and these stories and these ways of being get passed down from generation to generation within a family and then also as a culture. And we got to start questioning some things. We got to start questioning some things. And so I would love for you, if you're still listening to this, to ask yourself, what are some of the things that I've inherited? What are some of the stories, the narratives, the beliefs? What are some of the like external experiences, the environment that I grew up in, right? That created feelings inside of me where I then interpreted and gave meaning to. Because this is what happens. This is how identity gets created, as we are interpretation and meaning making machines. And a lot of times what we start to believe about ourselves as being inherent are things that were inherited through other people's ignorance, their own self-loathing, their own lack of, emotional intelligence, understanding, the power of their words and how their words can leave marks. So it's up to us. There's certain things we've inherited that we can't do anything about other than like obviously wear colored contacts. But like you were born with a certain color eyes, right? You were born with a certain color hair. You were born a certain height. Like there are certain things that get passed down, right? Whether it's the infamous such and such smile or this one's nose or that one's size of the hands or like whatever the thing is, right? Maybe you inherited some money. Maybe you inherited some land, whatever it is. But those things are not who you are. And again, who you are. A Course in Miracles is a line that says something like, you have to be reminded like a thousand times a day, or whatever, 1,000 times. You have to be reminded who you are because your mind is filled with such false stories. I'm totally paraphrasing, but we have to be reminded. So consider this episode a little love letter from my heart to yours, to remind you that you are the bee's knees, that you are the cat's pajamas. You're not broken. There's nothing that you need to fix. right? I know we feel that way, like, oh, I'm so fucked up and oh, I gotta fix myself. No, so much of it is recognizing and removing the blocks and the barriers we've built against our own awareness of our own awesomeness, of love, of the love that we are. That's really the work. Is instead of quote unquote trying to solve problems that we think we have, it's dissolving. It's dissolving the barriers to love that we've created. And we create it with our thoughts and our beliefs and believing the things that we've inherited versus standing in the truth of your divinity of what is inherent in you. And this is your goodness and your kindness and your compassion and your intelligence and your belonging and your inability to disconnect yourself, to separate yourself from source, because you are not a separation. You are a part of the divine whole, and you belong here, and you matter, and you are welcome here. And it can be really easy to forget this. So I hope today has been helpful in helping you to remember. And each time we just kind of lift the veil a little bit. We peel back another layer and we start to step more and more and more into the truth of who we are. That we are part of the whole, that we cannot be separated from source, whether you call that God or love or universe or higher power or something else. And that you are loved. And if you're listening to this, I love you. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day or evening. And as you kind of go out into the world, right, really, again, take a moment to ask yourself, what is inherent in me? And what was inherited? What are some of the narratives that I keep telling? What are some of the stories that I keep telling that weren't mine? The origin story didn't start with you. It was passed down. And we have to question this, right? Whatever your beliefs about money are, what's your belief about other people who you might see as other? What's your belief about the left, the right, however you vote? What's your politics? What's your political beliefs? What's your religion? What's your whatever? As you keep going down the line, what do you think to be true about relationships? How many times did you hear your parents say money is the root of all evil? Or if you hear it enough times, right? Like, oh, we can't afford it. So we inherit people's beliefs about other groups of people, about religion, about money, about sex, about food, about what's right, about values, what our core values, right? Our ethics, our morals. This is what life is for, is remembering, right, who you really are. And I think a lot of us are a little confused. And we started to take what people around us who have told us, we take it as gospel truth, and it was never your truth to begin with. There's the truthy truth, the capital T truth, and that's the one I hope you remember. All right, I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Wherever you go, may you leave yourself, the animals, the planet, the other people better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Bye.